Which one's that from?
Is that a
Colin, you are
colon? No.
That's Final Fantasy V.
Colin, you are ready to reintroduce and bring us back to the world of I Want to Be Your Canary.
You let me know when.
How about right now?
All righty. Welcome back. Or just welcome, I guess. This is I Want to Be Your Canary. This is our 5th episode, Final Fantasy podcast. Today, I'm Cullen. This is Ross.
Hello.
And this is Scooter.
I'm late again. I'm late, but I'm here. Hey.
He's always here. And our special guest flying all the way out from Alamosa, Colorado, just to be here with us today. That is 220 marathoner, Olympian, and all-around goofball, Chris Muggeridge.
Only came for this.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Why else would you be here?
Yep.
Nope.
Okay, so Final Fantasy podcast. I Want to Be Your Canary, namesake from the awesome, what I assume is an awesome play, Final Fantasy IX. I Want to Be Your Canary, and out of 100 nobles, 100 were impressed.
Every time.
Today we are going to be talking about antagonists, protagonists, monsters, and bosses. Not necessarily in that order, but maybe, I don't know. We'll kind of see what happens. Talking about Final Fantasy has some really memorable characters, for better or for worse.
Yes.
I feel like that exasperated yes was for the for worse comment.
Yes.
So some of our best protagonists, what are the characteristics of a great protagonist when we think of that? And I don't know if that's not necessarily in a Final Fantasy sense or just in a general protagonist, just a general protagonist in books and movies and whatever it may be. What do you guys? What is it for you guys?
General. And I mean, what you look for in a general protagonist. I mean, I look for in a Final Fantasy game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there has to be a character arc. There has to be some character development. They can't just be the same
Static.
person all the way through. Can't. Yeah.
Right.
It's not. That doesn't make any sense. It's not relatable. And then again, just as I just said, my second point, they need to be relatable. I need to be able to relate to them in some way. There needs to be a human element there.
Some fault.
Some faults. I mean, it's very. I mean, tales old as time.
Mm-hmm.
They need to. I mean, it needs to be that human fault. I mean, strengths. Triumph. I mean, all the above.
Just like in life, there is no progress without struggle.
Correct.
And being able to see that in protagonists and see that in characters is a reminder of is a reflection of ourselves. And I can't imagine I'm the only one here to have renamed Cloud or Squall or Zidane, or even Titus, for that matter, rename that character as my name, Cullen.
Yeah.
Right?
Something more relatable to you.
Something more relatable. I want to see myself be that protagonist, and I want to hope that the game's main character, who I've named myself after, is going to see progress, see struggle. You're going to want to see those characteristics of empathy and being tough and being just and kind of resilient and heroic.
Yeah.
You want to see those things in a protagonist.
Yeah, and I think we've said it already in just different words, but I think they can't be black and white. There has to be some contrast to their character and
some conflict
and also some authenticity, some vulnerability there, which again we've talked about in different words.
Yeah,
they need to be real.
Yeah, they do. I feel like a lot of these games hit pretty well on the coming of age or telling the story of a big struggle in early life of most of them are centered around a male protagonist, right? So a lot of them hit it pretty well. Some of them hit it close, but one or two were just I didn't resonate at all with.
Yeah, it kind of missed the mark.
Yeah. I could go over the main characters of some of them, but I think Colin and Ross, you guys are going to be better at the earlier ones. I could do 7 Up, but
the first one is you're really not necessarily a unique character. You're more of an archetype of a character, the warrior of light.
Right.
So that one's a little bit tougher to really resonate with because of it's not about the character. It's about the story.
Right.
And the character doesn't necessarily
dictate the story.
No, it doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
Now, Final Fantasy 2 and Final Fantasy 3 are not games that, like we've talked about, were not as impressionable on me. So, telling you about those characters, I'm not going to be able to give as good of a representation of who they are. The first guy in Final Fantasy 2, Furion.
I don't think, honestly, I played all the way through number 2.
You haven't?
No, I don't think so.
And I don't think that I have gone and done that as well. He volunteers to join rebels, take back his homeland, which has been lost to an empire, which is
sounds very number 12.
Yeah, it sounds like a couple of them for sure.
Yeah.
Eventually, he's recognized as a rebel leader. His inexperience shines through in certain situations. And that's kind of that vulnerability. That's kind of, hey, I'm not perfect in this role. I am going to screw up.
Right.
And it does show a little bit of that humanity. And that's just the kind of that main character in Final Fantasy 2. Final Fantasy 3, that character, the Warriors of Light, this more focuses on not necessarily 1, but 4 characters. So instead of going through kind of all of them, Final Fantasy 3 has to do more with the, I guess, the camaraderie of getting through.
Right.
And that's cool. I like that. And there are uniquenesses to that character, to those characters. But like I said, not as impressionable. I'm sure one day, I'll go through and beat it 2-3 more times and it'll become a more important, part of my life. But at this point, honestly, it's just not. It was not as the characters did not impress on me as much as they did.
Not as impactful.
No, and there were moments of 2 and 3 that did have very impactful character moments, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 2 in the United States. That was a big one. Cecil, he's your main guy, and he starts off as a Dark Knight doing essentially an evil king's dirty deeds. And he realizes at some point that, gosh, I'm not doing the right thing.
I think he realizes it pretty quickly. He just doesn't act on it right away.
He does. He realizes it right away.
Yeah.
Before they need to go to the to Rydia's town, they recognize it right away. Or he does, and he kind of gets like, you're going to do what you're told. So the conflict in his character is immediate.
Yeah.
And he's able to turn it around and go up and say, all right, I'm going to face my...
literally defeat himself.
I'm going to defeat myself to become this paladin. And that's admirable because once you go up to the mountain, I can't remember exactly what it's called at the time. Once you go up the mountainside and you face yourself and you become a paladin, you go back to level 1. You go from whatever you were as a Dark Knight, you start at level 1, which makes going down the mountain suck.
Yeah.
So he's
level
got
up quickly.
Very conflicted character, and which is cool. It's the dark side, light side kind of thing. Number 5 is a guy named Bartz.
Yeah, I remember that, but barely.
Yeah, Bartz. He is
B-A-R-Z, right?
B-A-R-T-Z.
Right.
He's got a chocobo partner, Boko, which is kind of fun. I kind of like that. I do remember that from the game. and he is his end game is he has to fight X-Death. What a name! What a name!
Antagonist.
The antagonist X-Death. You might as well just have a character, an antagonist called Bone Crusher Death Man. It's like, well, I don't want to go up against that. Number 6 is kind of a hodgepodge of characters: Tara, Locke, Edgar.
Tara was apparently the main one, right?
Yeah, she was, but I feel like they said, "Hey, they could have done better doing with a female lead, because she was certainly dwarfed by her 3 male companions of Edgar, Locke, and gosh, who was the other one? Hold on.
I mean, I feel like that happened in number 12 and 13 as well. You know?
Yeah, in Edgar, Locke, and Sabin, and that was unfortunate because they could have done better. They could have truly made her the protagonist, and they kind of dwarfed her role, I felt, a little bit. But she was a good protagonist, but I don't think she was a great protagonist because Final Fantasy VI didn't allow as much focus on to her because they divvied it up with some of the other characters. So you want to do 7, 8, 9, Ross? You do then a couple.
Yeah, and I mean, these are the big ones that I think a lot of people remember. So Final Fantasy VII, as we're watching on the big screen right now, Cloud was definitely the protagonist. Definitely a lot of conflict. We've discussed it on previous podcast episodes.
Yeah, and a lot of fault.
A lot of fault.
And not to his own fault, though. You know what I mean?
No, I think, I mean, definitely, I mean...
He was
He was definitely an interesting character.
Yeah,
I mean,
anyway.
yeah. Going forward, Final Fantasy VIII, you have Squall. He was an interesting one just because, I mean, when you going from Cloud to Squall, Cloud was so diverse and conflicted, and there's a lot of depth to him. Squall was like, I don't know, just the emo kid in the corner that doesn't really say much. I wanted to like Squall a lot, but just again, I don't think there was that much depth to him.
No,
he was somewhat relatable, but just
in some ways, but in a lot of ways, no, it was that reserved, like, and being a kid playing video games growing up, yeah, of course you're going to be reserved at times, but not to the level that he was. That was like, emo, black hair, it was weird.
And the character development was lacking with him.
It was.
I mean, really compared to previous Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, and well, then going to 9, right? Yeah. Like 9 was a totally different protagonist.
Oh yeah, Zidane was like the other end of the spectrum. He was very bright and a colorful character,
and out there, very positive, very positive.
And still, they were still able to successfully tie in the character development.
I liked Zidane a lot in some ways, for sure.
Then you got 10. You got Titus in 10. He was an interesting one as well.
Right.
He was, yeah.
The voice acting might have killed his character a little bit.
Well, but again, man, the guy that did the voice acting, I give a lot of credit to. But that being said, that scene probably ruined a lot of that game for a lot of us as far as the voices,
especially right after that epic battle.
Oh gosh, I know.
It's like I just had this awesome battle,
and out of Luca, and I know. But he was surrounded by a really good cast of voice characters, so that might have
really good cast of voice characters, and I think just really good characters in general.
Very true. That's very true.
So that might have weakened him, kind of like for Terra as well.
Yeah,
at least for me. Number 11 is online, so
you get to pick your own.
You get to pick your own.
Make your own.
12, you got Van, who I guess he was the primary protagonist.
Oh, no, no, I could argue that one big time. I would say,
you could say the princess.
Yeah, no, what's her face? I would say her, or originally, I don't know if you guys know, that game was developed to have Balthier as the main protagonist.
Yeah. So I think the game, and I haven't replayed it recently, so Colin, you could speak to this better than me, but I think the protagonist role was meant to be shared, not necessarily with Balthier, but between Vayne and the princess.
Yes. No. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that there certainly is some of that. I think Van takes the brunt, but it is certainly Van as a protagonist, though, has a little bit of that Titus.
Yeah, he's not a very
It's-
strong protagonist.
No, and yeah, like the princess's character, the transformation she had to go through from the beginning scene to the ends and all that, like that was the one that at least for me, I had more connection, or not connection, but I wanted to follow that one more. I had more resonance with
She
that
had a stronger foundation. Her,
Yeah,
her
yeah.
character did.
and more reason to it.
Yeah.
In 13, you got Lightning. She's probably the only
That's the thing.
semi-good character.
I have the whole game.
And I thought that if you took a role like Lightning, and as I thought Lightning's personality would have been a kick butt Yuna.
Yeah.
I thought that would have done, and I understand that maybe that role that Yuna played as far as a character needed to be played by someone, but gosh, I thought Yuna was just kind of
Maybe if like you could
weak.
take Yuna next 2 and replace her with Lightning's character.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I thought Lightning they really went the Cloud. I
Yeah.
felt like
Oh,
did.
they are going hard for that. There's like, come on.
They that was just the wrong, because it was a good character, it just wasn't a good game. I
terrible
I
game.
liked her as a character, but I wasn't big on just the game. Just
I
wasn't
don't know.
great.
What's weird to me is I felt like number 12 did that. They did all of that. The main guy that you played, the kid, right?
Mhm.
Basically a version of Vaughn. The main character of the game, Lightning, was the princess in 12, and it was just 12 to 13 was a really rough transition to me.
I think you can make the argument that
I
the
did-
Princess in 12 was more
I
like the
did
Lightning
not.
character.
Yeah, I did not like that transition as far as, because when you go from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, it's a totally different world, different game in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The core is there, but
13 was kind of a lazy Final Fantasy. I think
it just didn't feel like, I don't know what the developers and the the company thought at the time, but it just felt like
well, outside of the game itself, like the landscape of gaming was changing pretty rapidly
yeah.
to online platforms and massively, or MMOs,
Yeah.
massively multiplayer online RPGs were getting
Yeah.
more popular. And I think, I mean, my story is that the designers were thinking, oh gosh, this is the way gaming is going. We kind of have to, I mean, we have to go this route to stay relevant, and they chose the wrong route.
yeah.
Best way I think that I could put Final Fantasy 13, not to get too, before we move on, not to get too deep into this, but decent game, terrible Final Fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throw a
it's-
different-
it's
throw a
not
different
bad way
name
to
on
put
it.
Not a
Ugh.
bad way to put it.
Throw a
I've-
different name on it, and
For
I'm-
me, it'd still be a terrible game.
yeah, well, maybe. But I expected more from Final Fantasy.
Fifth-
Terrible game, terrible characters.
So Ross, real quick though, to recap, we went all the way through 14, because 14 was another build your own.
Yeah.
Yep, build your own.
15,
15, Noctis.
Noctis was.
It's all right. He's kind of a baby.
That's
He's
the thing, is
baby.
that it was like, all right,
Weak.
kid, go. I'm kicking you out of the Empire. Go do your thing.
See, and I think like 15, 13 in particular, the difference between them, for me, not just the story, but them and 10, Titus had a really strong supporting cast.
Yes.
And 13 and 15, oh my gosh, non-existent
Yes.
supporting cast.
Yes. No, I will.
Totally
I will agree with
weak
that.
characters. I mean, 13, you got Hope, you got Ice or Snow
Mm-hmm.
or whatever his name was. I don't even remember his name. That's
Hail?
how bad he,
Sleet?
Hail. Something to do with the cold and precipitation. That's
Yeah.
what his character was.
Well, And in 15, let's be real, Gladius was a dime a dozen kind of giant character.
Yeah.
Prompto, he had his moments. Ignis was, again, it was a flat character, I think, in a lot of ways. But
Well, they all looked the same too.
Yeah.
They all dressed pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It was kind of there
There
wasn't a
was-
whole
there
lot of
wasn't-
diversity in that character.
The style, it just
It's very homogenous.
coming from 9 and stuff like
Yeah.
that, yeah. So anyway, that was the main protagonist through all of them, right? I think we covered pretty much all of the main characters through the series.
No, we forgot at least one.
Which
Who are you thinking?
We skipped over Ramza.
Yeah, Ramza.
oh sure. in the
Rams
early-
is such a great character.
Yeah.
I mean, just a level-headed, wants to do the right thing. I like Ramza. Ramza deals with a lot of tough stuff, being, from his brothers, and just having to deal with his best friend betraying him, and he wants to do the right thing, and he isn't a world ender super protagonist to start.
No.
It's very modest, humble beginnings of who he is, and he has to kind of step up.
But the way that game plays out, they're very evident transitions in his character, and I like it. They almost do it in an obvious manner because they split up into chapters in the game, and also, I mean, there's visual differences between his character in chapter 1 and chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the armor changes obviously, but he becomes more mature. He grows up, and so the game's telling you like this character is different now. He's matured. He's grown. He's an adult. But you see that in his dialogue and his choices that he makes and his decisions and the people that he surrounds himself with. So I mean, although in some sense it's an obvious way this character is developing.
Yeah.
They do it in a very sophisticated way in terms of his interactions and the in-game dialogue.
Yep. Now, of those, who is
like what resonated the most, or
who are some of the strongest
good stories? So I think we talked about some of the ones we didn't like a lot, right?
I'm going to say my top 3 right now.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Rams at number 1, Cecil number 2, number 3 is Zidane.
Okay.
I would agree with Ramza. I don't know or remember too much about the Cecil character, to be honest, where I can't comment on that one.
Not yet.
Just getting back, I mean, we've discussed character's humanity, and he captures that for me.
Now that's the thing is that, and you guys didn't play Crisis Core, right?
No.
I would say Zach for me is one for sure. I would say him, Ramza, and I like Zidane. I don't know. I really liked Zidane's fresh take after Squall, and his whole that was a breath of fresh air for me. So
my only knock on Zidane is he was a bit black and white. For me. So it's this isn't real.
It was. He was very immature, very naive, immature.
But even being immature, like he lacked there wasn't that contrast in his personality. He did have his faults, but. He's always positive. It's there's no change. Whereas Cecil, he literally transitions from Dark Knight to a paladin.
Yeah,
and you see that in his character too.
That's a good point.
I think that for me, even though we didn't really talk about it because we've been talking about such main focus characters, I think probably my favorite all-time protagonist would have to be Vivi.
Oh,
in 9. And Vivi is
and how he developed. Oh man,
very conflicted.
Hell yeah.
In who he is, trying to find his own identity in what is a very confusing world, and what becomes a very confusing time for, him as these black mages are attacking people, and he's like, man, are they hurting people? I don't want to hurt people. And when they're on the ship and on the airship, and he sees that attack from those black mages.
That's one of my favorite cutscenes of all Final Fantasies.
Because you can see it in his eyes. The animation in that is like Disney level.
If you don't feel anything in that cutscene,
and the funny thing about that, because Scooter, I think you're absolutely right, is that you can see it in his eyes. And the funny thing is that his face is a black orb, and his eyes are just 2 yellow dots.
But that goes out to the artists and the animators in that scene, because you feel it.
Yes,
you know what I mean. That hits you, and not only do you feel it, but you're scared for him. And that's why I say Zidane for me is a good one, because he's the one that wants to go out and help him no matter what, right? And Zidane's character arches it's not as in depth as Vivi's in that story.
I would actually argue that Vivi isn't a protagonist. He's a very successful use of a foil for Zidane's character as the protagonist, because as you talked about, Colin, Vivi goes through this story of self-discovery and discovering who he is.
It's one of the best stories in all of the games.
But Zidane does too. It just takes him longer. I think it's almost like a foreshadowing of Zidane's own story and figuring out who he is.
I think that I can relate more to Zidane, especially when playing that game, being 13 years old, and there's certainly a coming into my own identity. Who am I as a person? Kind of thing that I felt like Zidane had a pretty good. At least he felt confident in he knowing who he was. Vivi really doesn't.
Yeah.
Vivi doesn't really have a grasp for who he is or who he wants to be. And I definitely feel like at that time of my life, I resonated more with that. I didn't have an idea of who I wanted to be. It was like, I'm in 8th grade. I'm about to go into high school. I have this, who am I going to, I'm coming into my own. Who am I going to be? Who am I going to, and I felt like Vivi had that. And Vivi's unsure personality of kind of being shaky and kind of being like, oops, oh, sorry. Oh, hey, soft spoken. It's like that. I felt like I resonated with me rather than being pompous and confident and sure, like Zidane was.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it may have been a it may have just been a circumstantial thing where
No, dude, I think that character resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the main things about number 9 is that's why that one hit home so well.
Oh, yeah, and he's very obviously one of the most beloved characters in all Final Fantasy.
No, 100%.
Yeah. So I think that Vivi is probably my I'm just gonna go with just one because I know we got a lot to talk about. I'm gonna go with Vivi. I love Ramza. You know how much I love Ramza, and I love Cecil and Kane, and there's so many great ones. But I think that Vivi really is my one. So, talking about, let's just go next. We don't need to do every antagonist because there are certainly ones that fall flat.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ones that are like, that's a good villain.
Yeah.
And I'll give a top 3 for this one. I think that Sephiroth was a great villain. He was.
That's an easy,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's an easy one. I think he's.
And again, especially if you play Crisis Core, he is a very much a main character throughout that whole game, and the development that they go through with him. In that, it reiterates in number 7 all the more. So
I loved the use of Genova
yeah.
as Mom. I thought that was just a great tandem that they had. One just for a silly reason, like we talked about X-Death in 5. It's like, what a name. What a name. You know what? What are we gonna name the bad guy? The main bad. Well, let's name him X-Death. Well, okay, that's not bad. And then lastly it's got to be Kefka. Yeah. Kefka is probably one of the most renowned, if not the most renowned, Final Fantasy villains. And he's just evil to the core. Poisons a river that is going into a town, straight up poisons it. I think he, in one game, or not in one game, one scene, I think he just straight up kills a puppy.
Yeah.
So just an evil, bad guy. With Sephiroth, there's conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 100%. He's discovering himself throughout most of it.
Golbez in 4, one of my favorite games, he's having his strings pulled by someone else. In these other games, they're good bad guys. They're tough to beat, but straight up evil to the core. Kefka, Final Fantasy 3, United States, Final Fantasy 6 in Japan.
Yeah.
Just a really great character.
Yeah. So I agree. I think Kefka, evil to the core, and then Sephiroth, he's an obvious one. I'm not going to spend any more time on Sephiroth, but for me, I appreciate the guys, those bad guys, but I also really enjoy the antagonists that. They had that dynamic with the protagonist that it's a really complicated and conflicted relationship. And I think no relationship is more complicated than the one between Titus and Jecht.
Yeah.
In Final Fantasy X. The father-son, yeah. And how, throughout the game, Titus loathes his father, hates his father, blames him for his situation and everything, for all of his shortcomings in his life, hates him to the core. And Jecht ends up being the big bad boss then. He's Sin. But lo and behold,
the whole reason Yeah.
Yeah, the whole reason Titus is in his predicament is that Jack brought him there so Titus
So
would kill
he
him.
would defeat his.
Yeah. And
That-
all the
yeah.
while, I mean, Titus has been wrong about his dad. That his dad has actually loved him, probably more than anyone that's ever been
He's
in
been
contact
watching
with him.
over him for how many millennia over that because
So it's a really interesting
yeah.
dynamic, and it's almost like, oh,
Yeah, and
makes you think.
And
Yeah.
the deeper you go into number 10's
Definitely.
story and how Jecht had to sacrifice himself, because he was in Brocka's time a guardian, and then he had to sacrifice himself to become the next version of Sin.
Yeah.
And to do that, I mean, as the story tells you, it's not a comfortable process, I guess. And you have to live with that for however long millennia, and to bring your own kin into that whole situation to basically end you. It's a really interesting way to put a spin on the antagonist story in this series. It really was. It was fun to find out, oh, wait a minute, that Godzilla giant creature out there is it's my dad. Wait a minute,
Yeah.
I gotta think about this. So
Definitely, it definitely caused you to stop and just
Yeah.
ask yourself, like, well, all right, let's reevaluate what's going on right here.
Yeah.
So you guys are kind of in cahoots right there with Jack. Is that your
I mean,
go-to?
So I'm going down the list here. Gilgamesh, obviously, in the early ones, and like we've said, he's come and gone. It's a reoccurring kind of guy. That's the thing, is that in number 7, like, so Sephiroth is obviously the main one. Each story has the main one and then a few other side supporting characters. Professor Hojo in number 7, I thought was just he was just gross.
Just a
You know
bad
what I mean?
man.
Like as soon as you hear him talk and what he's experimenting on and what he thinks about and all this, it's just one of those people who are just like,
Yikes!
I don't like you.
You're
know?
gross, my friend. You are
Yeah,
gross.
Like why are you doing that to this animal and like or whatever with Red 13?
Yep.
And the whole genetic. It was an interesting character, and then what he did to the family up in that North Pole town. I forget the name of it, but
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, further in the story you find out what Hojo did up there, and so Hojo's a good one for me.
That is a good. That's an underrated one.
Yeah, and then you go through the rest. Seymour Guado, weird in number 10.
He's just creepy. And I think I mean Seymour's great just because he's like just kind of just really
Oh no,
creep.
you hate him right away. Yeah, so well done. But
Stranger danger all over him.
Seifer in number 8, good, but
I like when the antagonists play on like some of those deadly sins like Cypher, like jealousy or envy.
yeah.
I mean, there's just something like Cardinal that's just, I mean, it's in every single one of us, and we can relate to. And something maybe we deny about ourselves, but we all experience it at one point or another.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's some good ones, and that kind of segues into some of the bosses that I thought
Sure.
Seymour, when you fight,
as a boss.
yeah, when you fight Seymour as a
boss
that's a quality boss fight right there that you'll get your doors blown off if you're not ready for it.
Oh,
And
no
that's
kidding.
a part of the game when you're fighting him on Mount
Gagazet.
Mount Gagazet.
That's one of the harder battles in the game.
It is. And that one, that is if you're not ready,
You're gonna reset your game.
yeah,
so
it
you
might
better
be time to
save.
go grind a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
It might be time to go grind a little bit and
Time to go back down the mountain.
Yep. And so Seymour, that was probably one of the more frustrating battles I think that I've ever had in a Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Some other ones, the Demon
man.
Wall, the Demon
Oh
Wall.
gosh, are you kidding? In 12?
Originally, I remember the Demon Wall from Final Fantasy 4 in
good.
Japan,
See-
2 in
See,
America.
now these are ones that
That
yeah.
thing just creeping in, but yeah, the
It-
Demon Wall
it
in
reoccurred
12,
was the same, probably same
Oh,
situation where
it's a
you're-
bear.
It was a time-based kind of battle where your
Yep.
party basically had to defeat a indestructible, what seemed to be wall,
Mm-hmm.
as it pushed you off the edge of this map cliff, right? And if you didn't defeat it in that set amount of time, game over.
Yeah, and it was
It was rough.
it was rough. It was pretty gnarly, and so the demon wall. I just remember playing it as a kid. It was stressful because you were used to being able to go, okay, time. I can take as much time to figure out what attack I want to do in this situation.
Mhm.
Right.
But it's like, oh, here comes the demon wall. It's moving on its own volition, not really
There's-
to the confines
Yeah.
of the timing mechanism of the game. So the demon wall is something that always spooked me as a boss, but not more than that. That's Seymour battle. That's a rough one.
I will agree in number 10, the Seymour battle when you get up to Mount Gagazet. If you are not ready for that one, you have to walk back down that mountain a little bit and climb back up to, get your party to that level. Just throughout the games, a few quick ones that come to mind as far as monsters or bosses, monsters in specific. Remember number 8 when you go into the first few forests and you come across oh man, it's a certain
Wendigo.
Wendigo, that character that looks like a wrestler kind of.
Silverback gorilla.
Yeah,
looking thing
silverback,
without
yeah.
a face.
That thing will knock you down quicker than bowling pins or whatever.
And then it makes you go berserk, and it's like,
Yeah,
what am I supposed
so-
to do about this?
That was a tough one early on in that game. Most all of these games, a real tough monster that you come across right away is a slime-based character,
Oh yeah.
where physical damage basically does nothing.
Hell, and if you don't have a mage, you're like, well,
If you don't have a mage of sorts,
fun.
your whole party is going to be sitting there.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
You have to use items or something.
Yeah.
for me, the battle that sticks out in my mind always and forever in Final Fantasy Tactics, Griff, when he used the Zodiac Stone and turns into Velius.
Oh, man.
Just it's the Ares Stone and turns into basically the big ram, jacked up ram
Yeah.
being monster.
That's a rough one.
Because he becomes a ram beast and he summons 3 gargoyles, and you essentially have less than 10 turns to defeat him. And if not, it's not exactly 10 turns, but if you don't get it done in 10 turns, your party's dead.
Pretty
And it's a
much.
very small map.
It is very confined.
So, and I mean, for those who don't remember, Final Fantasy Tactics is a turn-based, tile-based game, unlike the
Yep.
others. So, there's not a whole lot of movement or spaces to move. So, because of the close quarters, you are definitely vulnerable to enemy attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And most of his attacks, as well as the gargoyles' attacks, were ranged.
Yeah, they were, and another tactics one that had to do with the boss was Gafgarion.
Ugh, that
Down-
one, this the first time I played that one through. It took me, I think, 4 or 5 tries.
Oh
Easily.
that thing because you mm-hmm.
Well, it was the time wizards. It's like they
You got the
cast
time
haste
wizards
on
that-
everybody in their group and slow on your group,
and
it's
they're
like,
out of
whoa.
range.
And it's like, what am I supposed to do about that?
Yeah,
Yeah, you really had to
Gafgarion's
think
too
about those
too
ones.
strong.
Well, it's like for that battle, it's like you had to prepare for that battle way in advance. If you didn't have black mages or archers that were leveled up,
Mm-hmm.
you were gonna lose that battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like you just mentioned, the time wizards were out of range.
Yep. Then they're way up on the wall.
And
there.
Gaff Guardian could he would use a spell that he could transport around.
He's a jerk.
See, another frustrating battle would be against any mimic, any chest that you go and try to open that you think you're going to get something
Yeah.
good out of, and then surprise! It's one of the hardest
Psych.
characters in the game. It's a mimic that will confuse you, and oh man,
What I always hated is like, so you're going through the Calm Lands, and you like after the Calm Lands, when you're
Oh,
going
right.
to Mount Gagazet,
Right,
and you
right, in
you,
number
get, you beat
10.
the Defender, and it's like, oh man, I better go back to the inn in the middle of the Calm Lands just to heal up.
Yeah.
You're making way back, you're almost like, oh, I get almost there. Battle scene commences
Surprise.
in a Marlboro.
yeah. Good luck, bad breath.
Status ailments galore,
Oh,
and you
man.
die, and you have to play through
Yeah,
the last
marbles
45 minutes of the game
are
over
easily
again.
one of the hardest characters in all the
It's like,
series.
what
Which-
in the world was that?
Which that makes the ribbon
Yeah,
the most
useful item.
Oh,
useful
man.
item of all time for that creature alone.
Oh yeah.
Ribbon is, I think there's only 2. There might be 3 ribbons in Final Fantasy
Yeah,
VII,
we could
but-
talk about items another time.
Oh,
but
yeah, we should.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Another day, another dollar.
Another day,
Crucial.
another dollar.
So you said bosses though?
Yeah, bosses. And I know that we've got so off track, but my boss would certainly be Seymour on Mount Gagazet, and demon walls are pretty brutal too.
And yeah, I mean, and there's so many bosses to talk about, but
yeah,
absolutely.
Unaliska too. I mean, speaking of status ailments,
Oh man.
zombies forever.
Yeah, that's true. That's always a bummer.
So the ones that I had listed down, like once you get to end game, eventually some of these Final Fantasy games kind of give you okay, you've beat the game, great kid. Do you want to grind another 100 hours and double your level to 200 so you can defeat Ruby Weapon or
Yep, Ruby and Emmy.
and Emerald Weapon or there's several throughout the series just like that where you're not at all expected to beat this in the first round.
Oh no!
If you're cheating basically if you do.
Yeah, I mean, when I came across them at 7 or 8, it's like, no.
When you're under in the sub and you see you're like no
Get away,
and then you accidentally hit it and you're like, oh man, I got 20 minutes to kill. Man.
It was a version of Demon Wall in that game, I guess.
They ain't my day.
Yeah.
That was a rough one.
I'm trying to think other in-game ones. In number 12, there were a few good ones. Nothing that sticks out though.
Emmy and Ruby, that's always a favorite.
In the online ones, there was some famous ones that were programmed to be unbeatable that people spent, I think, something like 28 hours of swapping parties in and out to beat it. And Square Enix did not know that it was possible. Yeah, no, it was. But it was one of those stories that has been famous on forums and stuff you can read about online. I didn't play it during that time, but I've heard about that one.
Real life heroes.
Yeah, unbeatable bosses in these games in a way. There's
The secret bosses were always hard too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I can't remember what it was called, but the big blue orb thing and 9
Ozma.
when you go back was Ozma.
Yeah.
Not the one at the end of the game.
The
the
one in the
Chocobo
Chocobo
Forest,
upper world.
I'm talking about when you return to Alexandria, when you go to the castle, you can go straight up top right away to Queen Braun's throne,
I know
or
about this.
you can go to the library and there's a secret monster in there.
Oh, I was thinking of Ozma, who is impossible as well.
Yeah, but no, at that point in the game, the secret boss is incredibly powerful. It's harder than the boss that you actually face at that in that part of the game.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what am I supposed to do here?
So good bosses, monsters. I think some of the toughest monsters. I know you talked on Marlboros, or I've never in my 32 years had like the. I've always just breezed through it. That's Marlboro.
It sounds right.
Marlboro.
Yeah.
Barbara.
Mayflower.
That's basically it. Sunflower that spits out poison. Yeah.
Another one that's always been a real doozy. Master Tonberries.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, that knife is coming for you.
Oh yeah, it's coming slow, but it's
You know
coming.
it's there. Yeah, it's another death or demon wall kind of situation. where
Yeah,
you
that's
see it-
actually
you
that's
see it's
exactly
on
what
its
it
way,
is.
And as soon as it gets to you,
Yeah, he uses that knife and it's kind of done and
holding the little lantern.
and that little lantern and that I remember that was a real pain because when you were in Final Fantasy VII doing the battle arena.
Oh,
You'd
if you
have
see
things
one of
taken
those,
away from you and then it's like, oh man, what am I gonna do? He's gonna
two steps away from just
he's about to
guaranteed.
smoke me,
Yeah.
and so that was always a tough. Just
Toneberries were a great character.
not necessarily a boss, but
No.
certainly a
Really good
great,
monster.
a great Final Fantasy lore monster.
It's been around forever.
So yeah, and that's one of those things that has
And the
transcended
online games, I don't
one
know
game.
how the story went on 14, but in 11, the Toneberry, it had a backstory in one of the islands there. It was pretty interesting to kind of see how that developed.
Cactors. That's
another
also
classic.
that's a What'd you ever do with that Cactor decal that I gave you? Did you put that on your old truck?
No, I have it somewhere.
You need to put that somewhere.
It's on my old truck. It's somewhere.
I love characters. I always have
Behemoths.
Yeah.
Yeah, Behemoths is another good one.
Yeah. I mean, there are just some that are just so iconic, such iconic Final Fantasy character or Final Fantasy
Slayers?
monsters. Huh?
Mind Slayers.
Mind Slayers have been around for a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I've
more
done
like
lot
a
of them,
D&D
but
thing,
not
I
all
think.
of them.
What's the one that I'm thinking of from Tactics?
The Mind Flayer.
Mind Flayer.
Is that what it is?
It's
Maybe.
most. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's a mind flayer. Yeah, I guess as far as I feel like we're a little more unprepared for monsters.
Well, what was the one that you hated the most? Right away.
Oh.
Ruby weapon, at least for me in 7. As soon as I came across that one once or twice, or Emerald, what do you do?
Yeah,
There's
Maybe the
nothing
ultimate
you
weapons.
can
Yeah, I
do.
think.
that was
I mean,
perplexing. That was a tough one. Now, as far as
Or-
bosses go, yeah,
Oh, man,
it was Ozma.
Yeah, Ozma in 9. Yeah, again, what do you do?
Yeah, that one I had to really internet dig to equip
it's-
just the perfect thing, the
Yeah.
anti-shadow, because he's just so brutal. Now, as far as just regular, Marlboros have got to be it. Got to be the
because of the
non-boss
status effects.
that
baddie.
you can't plan for. It's random.
No, hello,
It's like
it's
And
me.
basically
this is the
e-
worst
Every
time.
bad status
Knock,
effect that you
knock.
can get.
Bad
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah.
Because there are a few monsters that can straight up wipe you out when you meet them with full health when you're
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah.
He casts that bad breath, and it's such a
Orin is
it's so-
confused.
it's
Orin
so,
does
yeah.
max damage to Yuna. Yuna's dead.
Yeah, because your characters are geared out, so as soon as they get confused,
Riku
hit
is
each
a
other.
berserk.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's like,
Riku.
well, I
Yeah.
have to sit here and watch my players kill each other.
That's pretty much what it is, and it
Marbles, yeah.
sucks, and that's why accessories and ribbons, and that's why some of that stuff is so important, especially if you know what area you're in, because you can't plan for those.
Yeah.
Those are such a pain,
for sure.
but I love them.
Hey, it's what makes the game
We
fun.
keep playing
mean,
them, so I mean
yeah.
they're doing something right.
Yeah, they're doing
Make
something
them
right.
hard, make them interesting.
Yeah, those things are no joke, and those have always been just a beast of a character, a beast of a monster. So
For sure.
I'm surprised. Well, they just can't do it anymore. That a Marlboro hasn't had a larger, just like really big role.
Oh,
And
as
maybe
as the
just because
character
they,
itself.
yeah, or maybe just been a real big antagonist. But
Final
maybe
Fantasy 16 Protagonist.
Ooh. Do you want to play as the Marlboro?
Oh, absolutely.
just
I'd be
just
destroying.
harassing
Oh,
villagers.
Yeah.
Hey.
Stas ailment. Stas ailment.
Yeah.
Sleep.
Lightning bolt. Yeah, so all right, got some protagonists, antagonists, monsters, and bosses. I think we covered some good ground there.
We did.
We did.
Yeah, it's been a busy night.
has.
Busy. All right, well, that is going to conclude, unless there's anything else that needs to be
Does our
said.
220 marathoner
Chris,
have anything?
Yeah, 220 marathon questions, thoughts.
His agility is maxed out as well as his speed.
Yeah,
No, I don't know. I've never played a Final Fantasy game, so
Yustine's going to
I'm
be
here to-
so upset
so
that
upset.
you got on this before she did.
Not really.
She might be.
She had her opportunity.
Next time I'm gonna play some.
I would like to point out that Ross said that. Ross
Hey,
said that.
Hey, she.
Hey, she'll be on it before too long.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
just got to get her to play through some of these really quick, and then we'll be
Yeah.
golden.
And then, Chris, when you play through them, watch out for the marbles. That's all we're going to say.
That's
Okay,
right, that's it.
Yeah.
And watch
See,
out.
I'm picking either 7 or 10 that I'm gonna play.
Ooh, don't
Ooh.
don't rule out 9, young blood.
Okay, 7, 9, or 10.
There you go.
Yeah.
7, 9, 10,
Roll a
3, 2,
1.
12, and 15.
Roll a dice.
It's somewhere. It's
Somewhere
somewhere
in
in
Just
there.
throw a D20 down.
I would start with 10 if I were you, because the voice acting, even though sometimes it's annoying, you're not.
That is going to be
just
more of a
reading.
modern
You're also
game.
not
It's a
starting
more
with the
modern game.
best in the series, so
Yeah, true.
that's probably not
wanna
a
go downhill.
bad way to go.
Yeah.
All right. That being said, if you are wondering what Final Fantasies to start with, just kind of use that little bit of dialogue that we just talked about right there to kind of maybe help guide your decision. But
You're welcome.
yeah, welcome. And thanks for listening. And
It's been real,
it's been fun.
and it's been real fun.
And just have a fantastic holiday season.
Happy birthday to anyone
Ho,
out there. Happy
ho,
Christmas.
ho.
Hi, Mom.
Ha ha ha.
I think you like that line more
Oh,
than.
I hate it.
I don't know.
That scene alone is why Yuna and Titus are the worst romance in the Final Fantasy series.
It is hokier than hokey.
It's hokier than the hokey pokey.
That's true. All right. Well, that's it for tonight, and we will see you next time.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for having me.